Hello and welcome to the Cuyamungue Institute, our Q&A Conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robear, the Executive Director, President of the Institute, along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, volunteers, and supporting members, we do want to thank you for joining us today. The Cuyamungue Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And our focus is reflected in three main areas: experience, education, and exploration. We respect the path of academic balance, the creative pursuit of science, while advancing, conserving, and restoring a direct experience of that deeper human connection to all of life. So it's part of our mission to expand our own experiential research with the multidisciplinary understanding that's available to us today. So, as an educational institution, we take an open approach and we create these Sunday roundtable discussions to broaden the scope of our own work and exploration, and that's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. As we look at an almost 50-year history of this institute, we've been promoting an awareness of Indigenous worldviews, particularly those that emphasize a harmonious relationship with nature, the interconnectedness of all of life, based on direct experience. In our work, we find that an embodied experience inspires a deeper understanding and appreciation of Indigenous cultures and worldviews, not only from the past, but obviously for those continuing to thrive today in the present world. So in the US, tomorrow is celebrated as Indigenous Peoples Day. Well, this is a national holiday previously celebrated as Columbus Day. Well, the idea of Columbus discovering America has kind of lost some steam. So they said it makes sense that we go back to the very people that were here on the shores when Columbus arrived, the Indigenous people. So it's part of our mission. We recognize that honoring Indigenous cultures involves acknowledging the rich and diverse histories, the traditions, the contributions of the peoples native to the land around the globe. From the Americas to Africa, Asia, Oceania, Europe, Indigenous groups have shaped and sustained unique cultures, languages, and worldviews. And for example, in Europe, we often focus on classical civilizations such as Romans and Greeks. But there are many Indigenous cultures that predate recorded history: the Celts, the Basques, the Sami people. The guiding principle here of Indigenous worldview is that all living things are connected. It was in 1854 that we got a few sentences here from a speech made by Chief Seattle. Quote, "Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing, every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people," unquote. So for me, I think that really says it all. An Indigenous worldview is a way of relating to people and the environment that's based on experiencing this interconnection of all things. This is not a belief system. It's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's hardcore science, which has been emphasized in our recent conversations with our series on the new cosmology. So truly, based on the experience and application of this knowledge, we have one of the most important solutions for guiding the future of humanity. With all the challenges that we face, holding this worldview provides a significant piece of the puzzle for solutions. I return to the wisdom of our ancestors. So, Laura?
Well, in radio, when back in the mid-90s, we were among those whose guests said, "Hey, what is Columbus Day? It should be Indigenous Peoples Day."
Yeah.
And here it is. Here it is. So we're making progress, Paul. But yes, these Indigenous cultures, they left legacies. I'm interested in the wisdom, the principles. It's writ in their art and artifacts. It's embedded in their traditional ways. It's in the landscape itself that they shaped. And one of the big questions for me has long been, given that we humans have spent far more time as hunter-gatherers, eons within these cultures, how did we thrive? How
Mm.
did we view the world and our place in it? What principles and values did we adhere to? What did life mean? What was the story of the universe that these cultures wove into their daily lives? The principles, the values, that which they held then to be self-evident and true and worthy of building a society upon. I think it's art as a language, a cultural carrier wave. Art was not about aesthetics. It was a powerful communicative and evocative means of telling a story about who we are, that we walk in beauty and gratitude, awe and wonder, to be in the groove and in the flow. The flow state we know is a healing state of the mind. It's enjoyable. It leads to inner contentment. Beauty not defined through aesthetics, but it was about the flow of balance and natural order, community, harmony, peace, the sense that life is good. It's all working, and we are working within the natural order, within the universe herself, about being a responsible member of the web of life. And we can do that when we see that all and one another is sacred, and that we use our resources wisely, being a responsible member of the web of life. Lots of stakeholders here, not just we humans. A healthy ecosystem means all members can thrive, ourselves included. And I'm convinced that none of us are healthy unless all of us are. We think about future generations and we set it up now, what they need to thrive. We treat the earth as sacred, honor our home. How did earlier cultures put these values and principles into place? Well, we we want to read that book of wisdom that is left, not in the pages of a book, but in the living cultures and what they left behind. We
Mhm.
want to ask you, what are those principles that you have incorporated into your life? How? How have you done so? And what would you hope to see our culture adopt again and reacquaint ourselves with and put into practice? How then would our world look? We can't go backwards in time, only forward, but can't we write our course and tilt our trajectory and take a few pages from those indigenous cultures who came before and from those who have been keeping those cultures intact, the living members of those cultures that are here today? We have a few voices among us today, and apply some of those lessons on survival and thriving. So
Yeah.
raise your hands to share, or Paul can see you, and line up because we want to hear from you. And I'd like to start with an Indigenous member. He's been our guest, Leon Sam Briggs, who's joining us from on the road. And great to have you here today, Sam.
Yeah.
Yo, Sieno, Guego. It's nice to be here.
Wow.
It's always wonderful to sit and talk with you guys. I've been on the road. Uh, I've been teaching about decolonization and mostly decolonization of foods and food sovereignty. And so I was up to Genesee Country Village in upstate New York, and I was literally making fry bread, but making fry bread without wheat flour. Because one of the first things we talk about when we decolonization and we teach about food sovereignty is getting rid of milk and getting rid of wheat. The human body, you really can't digest either one of them. Cheese can be made into products that's digestible, but wheat was it was brought here for fermentation and used for making beer, and then everybody drank beer. But as for wheat itself, it really isn't viable to the human body. And it makes people that are diabetics, it holds the sugar and stuff, so it makes it worse.
Mm.
So
The food
that's one,
sovereignty and bringing some of the old food crops back is a mission.
Yeah.
right. And it's been a blessing to me that I get to travel to some of these places and some of these other countries and work with some of these elders. And it's like I go there and I'm thanking them, and then they're thanking me because I took the time to come there, and they're wanting to listen to our stories, to our medicine, and red potatoes, they were given to the Irish, and they come from the Seneca Nation. A lot of the things that we have. Um, One of the things I was teaching about was like Jerusalem artichokes. I said, well, they're indigenous to my territory. They're not from Jerusalem and not artichokes.
Yeah.
So when we talk about these foods and we talk about like Indigenous People Day and stuff, that's one of the things that we do. We have to be holistic. We have to teach that it's mind, body, soul, and spirit. And then when we talk about olivetching, the earth, wind, fire, and water, that is all the medicine. Everything has to come together.
Mhm.
And so it's a blessing to have programs like your guys's that actually get up there and show that literally we can walk in beauty. We can walk in that blessing. And by taking back and recolonizing who we are. Big business has gone to so many different types of using every byproduct that they can find to add into food. And there's literally a lot of health issues and stuff that come up from, just the byproducts in the food.
Right.
You know, when you look at a list, I was looking at one, and I think it was 150,000 metric tons of sawdust was used in food preparation in the last year.
What for?
Sawdust.
What for? Filler?
Well, yeah, it's used as filler, but it's also used as it's a byproduct. So it's used in your meat, it's used in your flours. A lot of times you buy cinnamon. If you don't buy cinnamon sticks and grind it yourself, half of the cinnamon and stuff that you buy, half of these dry products is sawdust.
Hmm.
Wood pulp.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at that, then you have to deal with the tannic acid. I was doing one program, and they said all the natives boiled all of their syrup and stuff with boiling stones. And I said, we kind of laughed because I was watching them do this. So when they got done, I took science. I took a pH strip. I walked up and I put it in their syrup that they were going to give out to people, and it was so high on the acid because when you take those stones out of the fire and you're putting them in there, you're using ash.
I see.
Oh, that makes
And
sense.
so that ash is producing, like that high alkaline. And so we use wood ash to lye our corn. And so when we're cooking our corn and stuff, we put the wood ash in there. It breaks down the hulls because traditionally corn is not digestible to the human body because it doesn't stay in it long enough because of the hulls and the eyes on the corn. So
Oh,
once you lye the corn, you've released that. And so basically we're creating harmony. So you
you know,
take that and that increases the viability of what you're eating.
Yeah.
it's such an important body of knowledge about the seeds and the plants and how the indigenous peoples were hybridizing naturally. They weren't using GMO, they were hybridizing naturally for eons. And we have a friend, Lorianne David, with Aurora Farms here, and she was saying, the climate is changing so fast that she is looking at various different seed strains to see, we're just guessing about what's going to grow well here, but turning to the native seeds and turning to all the heritage seeds and the growing them as well. I mean, so we're being forced to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And a
Yeah.
lot of times too, even with our corns, our plants that we plant, they are adjusting every day to the environment. And they have to adjust to the environment or they will not survive.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the food viability of your plants and your seeds, you have to look at the ground conditions, like you were saying about with putting the fish heads and stuff
Right.
in the ground. A lot of this stuff, taking care of our earth, taking care of the mother. It's when I was like, I'm in Pennsylvania right now, and I was following, and I could smell it, and I said, I just took the first road I could get off away from this because the state was going down the road with a truck with a sprayer on the side, spraying 100 feet off each side of the road. To keep, instead of having people cut and trim the road, they spray it and kill everything off and they use a mixture of Roundup and atrazine. Well, anybody that was in Vietnam knows that the reason it turns orange is because that's why they called it Agent Orange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Weeds are so healthy. My sister found purslane just growing naturally. So we've been harvesting it and freezing it and making green smoothies out of it. Purslane
right.
has omega-3s and omega-6s. There it is in a plant. So
Yeah, and the thing that you look at is, we're talking about the earth and talking about what we do. Um, this Roundup, these chemicals, they do not leave. So now you've got these big GMO fields and stuff, and you guys, oh, I only hunt, I only eat what I hunt. And I said, yeah. And I said, you've got a GMO field here that's being sprayed, and these animals, they're eating that. So now they're finding the GMO, they're finding Roundup and stuff in these animal systems.
Yeah.
And there's ways of preparing that to kind of get rid of it, but most people, they want the quick and easy.
Yeah. Sam, this is a great example of how we have lost our way sometimes by separating ourselves out from that which we live around, not having a connection to all of life that surrounds us. And so we've engineered and industrialized our food and done things in a way, sometimes to our advantage, but most of the time not. And so the work that you're doing in that way. And the other thing I want to bring up, because of the unique role that you're in as a tribal member and a indigenous person, and that is that there's this incredible hunger from people looking for wisdom traditions. People are looking for answers, and they're looking to people like yourself to say, what the hell is going on with the hurricanes? What's going on with this over here? Why is it that our government does this and that? And we're all looking. And then we go back and look at your ancestors and our ancestors as well, the pre-ancestors that go way back in time, and say they had such a simpler way to approach life itself. They saw life as interconnected. It's not a far-fetched theme to remember that we are connected to all of life around us. And yet somehow in this Western culture, we've cut ourselves off, and now we're having to rediscover. We think it's some magical discovery that we're connected to everything around us.
And that's the big thing, is that we are connected. And so when you live in a city and you start disconnecting, and you become part of that concrete forest.
Yeah.
And so when you're in that concrete forest, those buildings, they're taking in all those toxins from what if you were out in the forest and vehicles were driving through, the trees would absorb that exhaust and then dissipate it and then give us back clean air. Well, your house and your concrete buildings, they're not going to do that.
Right.
So they're building up a toxicity in their structures. And so once you get that toxicity in there, there's really no way, to relieve it.
Well, actually, I think that as the hurricane just showed us, nature is the dominant force here. Ellen and Abby Isman, who will be joining us in November, they were telling me that science is finding microbes now that didn't exist before, that are now decomposing the molecules that technology has put together.
Oh.
And so nature is finding a solution. Nature will take it all back. It's just going to take a long time. But life will find a way even to decompose and eat basically those unnatural elements, that unnatural byproducts that we're creating. So,
and one of the things with that too is I've had the benefit to know some really good scientists that are willing to work with me, and I show them how we process our food. So then they start testing. Now they're giving me scientific proof what we do is working. It has worked. And so they're saying, well, when you're hand pounding or using stone ground and you're doing that, it doesn't produce gluten. A lot of gluten is produced by heat, especially with wheat. And so when people want to live gluten free, they need to buy stone ground, or they need to buy their whole products and process them themselves. This is the way that we build our food sovereignty, and we take back who we are. I've seen people that were diabetics that have done this, and I've listened. I was at Mayo Clinic and I was speaking there, and I literally had people that specialized in digestion and stuff saying, well, this is how this works. And one guy says, yeah, he says, I remember listening to this thing about the cayenne pepper. And I said, yeah, I said that one of the first things in the 80s when I was down at Penn State, I listened to a program from a gentleman, and he was a pork producer, and he had taken his pigs in and getting them processed, and they were throwing out 80% of the livers, kidneys, and all of those pieces because they were too toxic,
Yeah.
and they had diseases stuff in them. And then he found that he went to South America, and I think it was in Brazil, and he was down there in his hog farmer, and he was processing these pigs, and he would lose like 1%. And he says, well, how are you? And he says, oh, we feed our pigs. He says, we give them cayenne pepper. He said, basically the capsaicin. And I have seen that in myself, that I use raw cayenne pepper all the time. And I've had people say, well, they don't like the taste. And then I said, freeze them, freeze the capsule and stuff, and then take it. And then finds that once that gel cap starts breaking down, you're already past all those other. So now we have science that's starting to say, well, yes, you can do this.
Indigenous ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you're getting that benefit.
Yeah.
I met a Tasuki elder that was talking with elders in South America and collaborating on reviving the ancient methods of growing. And we got a little bit of a tour, and he said, you guys call it, what is it? Bioculture. You guys call it modern. No, these are the old ways. We knew about all this long before because it works with nature and not against her. So what we think is so new and innovative often has such a deep history.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when I'm teaching about the three sisters. There's communal gardens. You have three ancestors that were put together. As they grow, they feed each other, they protect each other, and they support each other. Because the corn is growing up, and it's giving the strength and the ability for the beans to hold on to the stalks.
I see.
And then you have the squash going out, and it's spreading out, and it's protecting and keeping the weeds down, and also providing nourishment, because it's gathering all of the solar rays and everything that help hold the moisture and start solidifying some of the nutrients in the ground, allows them to. So you have those common plants.
Yeah.
We think of competition, but no, cooperation is so present in nature as well. And it was permaculture I was thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam, for dropping. Hope to see more of you, and good luck on your speaking tour, and keep up the wonderful work that you're doing.
We need to have you back. We need to have you back with an update.
Yeah, well, we can do that. So, but I've got 15 minutes to get ready for my next presentation. So it was wonderful to talk to you guys.
Thanks for dropping in.
Well, you guys have a wonderful day. It's always a pleasure to see you guys, and we will talk to you soon.
Well, blessings to you, brother.
Appreciate it.
Go to our website, Leon Sam Briggs. He did a 2-hour presentation not too long ago with us. That's been recorded, and it's available for listening to. Let's continue with the discussion.
I also need to talk to Lee Brooks, who has also limited time books next. And Dory just recommended Wild Earth, Wild Soul, the book.
Yeah. And Lee, can you turn on your mic? I guess we'll have to listen to you verbally because we're not getting a picture.
I just want to say that introduce Lee, who's also been our guest. And Lee is the educator, curator, and gallery owner of Arctic Raven in Friday Harbor. And we had a wonderful discussion, Lee, on totem poles, and totem poles as being broadcasting to the land, a claim to the land, anchoring in the land. Do you want to start with that? Because you work with Native artists up and down the Pacific coast. And
you had a question about totem poles?
I was just,
I guess you didn't hear that part. Lee, just share us the story that Laura and you discussed last night and why it's important, the work that you're doing.
Well, I guess all I can do is tell you what I just showed up here, and I'm trying to provide a window so that we can look into Indigenous cultures and that they can look back at ours. So I try to explain as much as I can to each side. And one of the things I'm hoping to do is to help local indigenous peoples that were so beaten down get a footing and a leg up to reinvent their cultures and their through their artwork.
Yeah.
And so I just landed here with that mission out of nowhere. And yeah, so I've run the gallery for 30 years. I deal with the Northwest Coast people, the Inuit people, and the groups from Alaska. And I spent quite a bit of time getting to know them, and I like to share whatever I can when people have questions.
I was just going to say, Lee, the unique situation that you're in is because you're talking. I don't know how many different tribes you're working with, but I know it's a big, vast territory up there in the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, and the Native peoples' artwork there has such deep, profound representation of the spirit of the people. It brings forth both their ceremonies, their traditions, their rituals in ways that speaks even if you know nothing about it. By looking at the art, all of a sudden you transcend into a different world of experience. And so the beauty of your gallery is that you walk in and you see these magnificent carvings and drawings and paintings and sculptures. And all of a sudden, it's like you just want to sit down and meditate. I mean, you want to sit down and just enjoy the energy of it because it's so powerful. So you've been blessed to be surrounded by this artwork all these years, and also being blessed by having the direct relationship with artists. Key families that anybody who knows the Pacific Northwest, like Richard Hunt, for example, people that are leaders in the Aboriginal Native peoples, the First Peoples of Canada. This is profound that you've had that gift of relationship.
And also, Lee, that you've told the story of how when a culture gets broken and they want to then pick up the pieces, this is one of the tracks of doing so through language, through their arts, through their buildings, traditional ways, dances, ceremonies, rituals. But you focused on the art and how they picked up some of the old artifacts and looked at the forms and said, oh, this is our vernacular in terms of symbol and iconography. And how much you've showed me art, how much can be done with just 3 beautiful symbols. I mean, it's just the stunning array and the depth of meaning. Do you want to speak to that?
Well, you brought up one of the 4 cultures that I'm hoping to present at a future museum offering that depicts the 4 separate groups. And the one that you're speaking of was the Coast Salish people. They have 3 basic elements that did survive smallpox and, excuse me for us being here. And about 95% of the population did disappear. And over a 100-year period, there was no art that survived that 100-year absence. And so all of the wood artifacts disappeared. So the evidence was very slim, and most of it was found in stones and a flywheel. It was a flywheel for a spinning device that they had, a spindle wheel, they called it. And those elements you can find in the old museums, Museum of Natural History in New York and the Field Museum. They've kept those, and the Salish artists that I know, like Susan Point, have gone there. They've studied them, brought back those elements as the only remaining evidence that they have to work with, and they've used those and extrapolated everything from that. And by virtue of that, all of the art now is contemporary, using ancient symbols that meanings may or may not have come through and have to be reinterpreted.
Well, you've shown me those symbols, and I can say that you can find them in cave art going back 30,000 years. So it's a very old language. And these symbols have been with us. They're Earth's glyphs. It's beautiful to think about how they continue on and how key role that you've been playing, Lee, for 3 decades in helping that story come out and supporting those artists. So thank you. We hope to have you back and tell us more about these 4 cultures that you're wanting to showcase. So we look forward to that. Anything else you want to share right now?
Well, I want to interject and just say Lee is hosting and putting together an entire museum exhibit up in the San Juan Islands next summer. And he's going to have an interconnection of all these cultures and an entire museum dedicated to it. And he's going to have live speakers and lots going on and activities. It's going to be pretty profound. So we are actually scheduled to be there in June of next year just to attend Lee's presentations and Lee's installation. So yeah,
Where? What town?
Here.
it's in Friday Harbor, San Juan Islands.
Well, listen, I would like to make one more comment. One of the groups I addressed was the Coast Salish and their lost art. And we also spoke about another group, the Cuyamungue people, that had totem poles. And that's something that did survive and did come through and was kept intact. It was held together by the Hunt family and a number of other Cuyamungue families. But totem poles are very critical, and they're an icon that most of the rest of the world sees and doesn't understand much about. But totem poles, they stand outside of the longhouse. The longhouse is where they all lived. They had their crests, their animals, and their stories were all told outside in these totem poles that were perpetuated. They were carved over and over again and kept alive that way. They were not destroyed. There's a longer story, but they did survive, and they're continuing to tell their stories. The poles are up for about 70 years before they fall down, decay, and in the process, the younger people have to learn the stories to be able to tell them to carve another one and rise it again to perpetuate that particular type of Northwest Coast art. So some of it did survive and some of it didn't. And it's really interesting how they all went different directions.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it was from some totem poles that we see some of the postures that we use in our ritual posture work. So we
Yeah.
see them. Yeah. It's being one of them. You can't see me, but
You're speaking of welcome figures, and they're the figures that would be on the edge of the territory that welcome you to the territory. And often their hands are held out in that posture
Yeah.
of welcome.
And that just that just the generosity of spirit, that unto itself, that the major thing they put these giant poles in front of their village at the very shore, so that as you come up and you get closer and closer, you see the big welcoming totem pole saying, "Come, join us. You are family. We are one."
Yeah,
what's interesting is you see this petroglyph all over the world. And Paul and I said, why aren't we doing this? Let's do this.
Yeah.
We did this for multiple sessions, and we're like, this is about welcoming that realm, opening the portal, welcome. That's what we did in our experience. And then Lee, you confirm it. Oh yeah, that's their welcome sign.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this body language is universal. Wow. Lee, we look forward to further conversations with you in depth with visuals.
Yeah,
So
we'll
you
get you.
about this beautiful.
I hope I can figure out how to do that. I'm pressing all the buttons, but I'll get savvy.
Because
Thank you,
it's
Lee.
like broadcasting. It's really like the same Aboriginals who ritually sing the song lines with art and song and dance and ceremony to activate them, to keep the ancestors alive, to keep their traditions alive.
Yeah.
To me, those totem poles now I see with new eyes are also broadcasting that message.
Well, actually, speaking of song lines and the Aboriginals, let's go ahead and go over to Rex, because Rex has a story himself about Aboriginal insight, wisdom, etc. Hi, Rex. Good to see you again.
Yes. It's good to be back with you. I
Yeah.
mean, my experience is with Indigenous people, Aboriginals in Asia. And I mean, for those interested, there's a wonderful book by Robert Wolfe called Original Wisdom, which really, we share a very, very similar story with completely different tribes. I was very young. I was 18 when I was serving with the British Armed Forces out in Sarawak. And my role as a paramedic was to look after the guys, but also to look after the hearts and minds of the villagers. And after spending time with them, I asked if I could learn their language and they would teach me as much as I could. The chief decided that I was sufficiently, I'd made sufficient progress that he asked to adopt me as a son, to fully induct me into the tribe, which I was so taken with. I mean, I was in tears because you realize the enormity of that offer. And so I joined the tribe as his son. But it took many years for me to understand everything that they'd passed across to me. one of the things that sort of struck me only recently was it's about language, because we spent about 3 hours a day talking with each other, but it took me ages to realize that I somehow was picking up far more than we talked. And I realized that, in a sense, I was beginning to pick things up telepathically. And that didn't strike me until many, many years later, when I had to attend a very high-powered meeting representing a group of people to get a university to accept the training we did at doctorate and master's level. And it was in German, and I wasn't fluent in German. And they said, you know, what language do we speak? And I said, please speak German. Everybody else here is German. And amazingly, I decided I couldn't listen. If I listened to every word, I'd understand nothing. So I just sat and relaxed. And after about half an hour, they're coming to a decision about something, and I think it's wrong. So I said, I think this is what you've been discussing, and that's what you've arrived at. And I don't think that's right. You should try this. And they all looked at me, and you could hear their jaws hit the table and said, you understand every word? And I said, no, but I'm just sensing this. And they said, yes, but you're right. And your idea is far better. And through the whole of that day, on 3 occasions, I just used that to do that. And it blew me away, and it blew them away, because they said at the end of it, you're an absolute lie. You understand every word of it. You're just, doing whatever. So that was one thing about language. And just actually this weekend, I attended, I had to attend another meeting, and the issue of language came up again, because they were talking about artificial intelligence and what they were going to do with all sorts of things. So the 2 issues they were talking about was collective intelligence and artificial intelligence. And I sort of said to them, you've really got this wrong, because we create words, and the more words we create, the more we lose touch with the origins and source of what it is we're trying to impart. And what we shouldn't be doing is focusing on artificial intelligence. We should be trying to focus on this idea of bringing back our telepathic capability, because we do have it. And funnily enough, it was the medical officer of health of Zagreb, who I spoke to some years ago, during the breakup of Yugoslavia and the wars that followed, the internal wars that followed it. One day she thought, her husband was an architect, but he was also the troop commander of this mortar battalion. And she thought, when he comes, it'd be really nice if he picked up a loaf of bread on the way home. And she was utterly surprised when he arrived in the house, completely unusually, with a loaf of bread. And she said, why did you bring that? And he said, I don't know. He said, just as I was leaving, I suddenly thought, maybe I should bring a loaf of bread. And she was quick enough to realize what had happened. So they actually worked together. And in the end, they could have a conversation telepathically between themselves, which really sort of shocked me. So those were 2 things. But there were 2 other things which, again, struck me later on. One of them is that within the tribe, and certainly Robert Wolfe brings this out in his book with Original Wisdom, they tend to associate you, or they say that you are associated with an animal. And I really didn't think I had associated with any until many years later. I realized that it had happened to me, but I was sort of not quick enough to pick it up. But a pangolin, which is a very old and uncommon animal, walked into the little cave that I had and stayed there for a couple of weeks, which was very unusual. And it was only then I realized, this humble ancient animal had actually sort of chosen to be with me for a while. And the bad news was that the locals, once they found out where it was, they took and net it, because it's a local delicacy. But I was really sort of taken with the fact that something that simple and that ancient had come to be with me. That was certainly one thing, but the other thing was how they passed traditions on. And one day I was in the military location, which we were far enough away so that they were secure. But I just was out in the evening, just sat there, and the jungle is not quiet. I mean, it's intensely noisy at night with all sorts of things going on. But all of a sudden, this music came through, wafted through the trees and the jungle and everything. And it was from the village. And I didn't know this, but they had a large gamelan, a selection of gongs, gamelan, and they were playing their music. And it was indescribable. I mean, it just took me to places I couldn't imagine, just sat lying on the ground listening to this. But the impact of those people on me has taken years and is constantly developing. But I really do believe that we are missing enormous value in not appreciating this. And my own view now is I don't have the evidence, but I'm fairly certain, and I believe strongly, that it's the Tasmanian and Australian Aboriginals which are the most ancient, because Dreamtime is such a powerful element of their work.
Yeah.
And when you sort of talk to them about it, they can't really describe it. But somehow I sort of found I was sensing what they said.
Right.
And the same thing happened with the Aboriginals. They then take you very much into their confidence. But I think what we have to do is stop thinking and allow, which I think is the biggest problem of the Western world. We use our brain, and we shouldn't be. We should be losing our heart and sensing the world rather than thinking about it.
How about you, both?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially depending on the brain alone is the big misnomer, the big confusion, the big dysfunction. And that's what Dr. Goodman, the founder of this institute, talked about, is that the full spectrum of the human experience has to have the alternate reality along with this ordinary reality. We can't just limit ourselves to this one side of the puzzle. It's just a boring way to use the human experience. And so,
or if we're only in our rational and linear thinking, we're missing so much of the other bandwidth of our capacities.
I mean, Joseph Chilton Pearce wrote about this, and he was absolutely clear about it.
We've interviewed him,
that, and if you talk about even the neurological development, the brain develops after the heart, and actually the heart is far more important to us than the brain. You know, if the heart stops, that's it. I mean, I know the brain collapses, but the point is, you can sustain the brain if the heart stops through other ways. But for me, it's fascinating.
Powerful transmitter receiver, our hearts as well. Yeah,
it is enormous. Yeah.
Energy.
I mean, there's so many other stories, and the trouble is, it's rather like you're just picking out tiny bits, because I've been asked to write about this, but to be honest, I'm having trouble distilling elements out of it, because it's such, I don't know, it completely consumes you, the experience and everything.
Well, and with your experience at a young age, it changed your life. It gave you a different direction, because without that access to the Aboriginal worldview, the Indigenous worldview, being a military guy, being a scientist, all of that, you would have been down a single path of worldview, and you would have missed out on this full spectrum.
But there's something very strange here, because at the age of 5, I had an experience which revealed the full nature of reality. And at 5 years old, to be confronted with the full aspect of reality was quite a big shock. But I decided that what I'd have to do is go along with what I was told, but never to believe it was true. So in other words, you go along with the way that you are enculturated, but that's not real truth. And I found that then with the Aboriginals, the real truth was revealed, because they live it. They don't think it, they live it.
Right.
Well, I want to say that, our institute is all about going direct. We all have this capacity to relate, to engage, to be in telepathic, direct knowing, open up dialogue with the cosmos. That is us. These societies honored it and taught it from an early age and had their practices in place to do so. Our culture put those by the wayside, but our culture is also very free, if we can, to pick this up and go direct. These indigenous cultures are fascinating to us,
because
they are helping us show the way and look at what a society does when it lives in those values. So all of these threads are part of our tapestry.
Right.
One of the things that caught me up this weekend was collective intelligence came into this discussion with all of these sort of executives and business people.
With the AI.
And there were 2 aspects that one of them is they said that because it was a consultancy on development and leadership and all this other stuff, they said so few companies are really good in leadership and maximizing their resource. The vast majority is pretty ordinary. And they were talking about collective intelligence as if, you know, all of this feedback. And then they began to talk about picking out the leaders to really be the example of that. And I said, I think you've got this wrong here. Collective intelligence is working because maybe the majority of businesses that run at a level that gives them a living realize that if they were to up it, their use of resources would actually destroy the planet because there's only so many resources we can utilize. So the fact that not everybody wants to be at the maximum capability seems to me to be quite sensible.
Right.
They just rejected
more,
this.
gobble up everything.
Yeah.
I think I've
That's
read that
right.
our electrical output, if everything was engaged in that, there's not enough electricity to sustain. We'd be chewing up everything just to support the artificial. We've
Yeah.
got solar supporting us, the living. Let's go with that, okay?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I would think that I know Monica DeBras Bowles is here. We need to talk to her as well. She would say the collective intelligence, that's the noosphere. The collective is us humans
Yeah.
Right.
of life. That's the sphere we want to
Well,
look
sorry,
at.
it's not just us, it's all life.
All
All
of
life.
life. All of
And
life.
even a boulder, in
Yeah.
my view, has an energy and a voice.
There you
I
go.
every
Beautiful.
atom, every iota of
Couldn't
this
agree more. Yeah. Well,
thing. I want to say just one thing though, that you mentioned telepathy. I find that we fall into telepathy actually naturally to the point where it's just part of the input, but we're not really saying, oh my God, that was telepathy. I know that our dog, and I've talked with other dog owners, but we had this beautiful, intelligent Malamute wolf, Chance. And many of our friends have met him. And we would just think the thought, oh, we should go walk the dog. We should go get outside. The thought, we didn't move a muscle. So he wasn't reading body language. He would go stand by the door. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
let's go. He read our minds. We were in that relationship with him. And you mentioned talking with I think it's a field that sometimes is created. We certainly find that with direct knowing in our practice. We're opening up a portal. We're opening up a field. Our physiology is shifting. We're opening up bandwidths. A portal's opening between the realms. Something is coming through, transmitting, receiving. We get that a lot. But also, I think that certain powerful medicine men can also generate that field, right? The concept of darshan. Paul and I went to, I think it was Esalen, to a gathering of the shamans from all the cultures of the Americas.
Mhm.
And it was like, go support a shaman and go sit and have a reading with him. Paul picked a shaman that was just sitting quietly playing a flute, because Paul plays a red Native American cedar flute, and a bird in the tree was singing back to him. He was having a duet with a bird. Paul does that. We're like, oh, that's our shaman. That's our shaman. And he only spoke Spanish. There was a translator. And when he sat down with us, he instantly knew us and knew our history and was talking to us. The translator was getting every 10th word. We understood everything the man said, everything. It was like we were speaking fluent Spanish, but we don't. And we understood him. And this was such a magical experience.
Mm.
But I heard the translator and I'm thinking, she's picking up, the baby language of this. He's speaking in depth and in depth. And it was just a beautiful encounter. I never considered it might have been telepathy, that we were so tuned in to his wavelength, that we were getting what he was saying from a direct knowing way. I thought we just suddenly could understand Spanish for that brief half hour. No, I think it was so I think we fall into telepathy more often than we know. I think when you go in and you read a room, I think when you understand and you're empathic, that is a form. I also want to acknowledge the recent passing that we heard from our friends in Placitas. Tony Bianca's here, of Vicky Peck, who told us the beautiful story.
Do you want Bianca to tell the story? Because Bianca is here, Laura.
Bianca, yeah, I'm Bianca, you need to tell that story. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rex.
Yeah, yeah,
Good
yeah.
to hear
Yeah,
all the
very, very insightful and
fun
wonderful
and
story.
extraordinary life.
Thank you.
Tiki?
Sorry, I had just stepped out and just heard my name when I came back in, so I'm not sure what I missed. Sorry.
Well, Laura, go ahead.
Telepathy. And we were mentioning Vicky's story. Vicky's just passing, and we thought that was better told by you. Vicky's story of being in the Amazon and where she would go out with the hunters. And they didn't have phone service. They weren't yelling to one another, but they'd be dispersed in the forest. One of them would bring an animal down, and the hunter she was with just suddenly said, "Oh," and went there and showed up right, made a beeline to where the kill was.
Yeah.
He could help.
Well, yeah, I think their telepathic senses are just much more acute. I mean, they're just they communicate that way. And I think when she ended up, she did a 2-month stint with the Ashwar tribe. So yeah, she was in the art she went into the Amazon for 2 months to teach a certain tribe and their leaders English. And when she arrived there, she put her things in her little palapa, and this little man showed up and said, "We've been waiting for you." You know, and she said he walked for like 8 hours to show up when she arrived. And that's just how they operate. I mean, a medicine man, their rite of passage to become a medicine man is to spend a year in the jungle communicating with everything without any contact with other people. So this is to them an inner sense. And I've been looking a lot at, like you were saying, telepathy is a part of our senses that we've atrophied because we've become so external. But yeah, that's alive and well in the jungle for sure.
Yeah,
We have
beautiful
a-
story.
Now they're getting modern technology too, and I hope they don't atrophy it either.
Right.
So
I think it was Lelania that recently attended a lecture by a Hawaiian elder who used the word instead of artificial intelligence, it was ancestral intelligence.
Ancestral intelligence.
Yeah, ancestral intelligence. Yeah, thank you,
Yes.
Lelania.
Yeah.
That was a good one. Yeah.
And then he also said, and we need to do CPR on the planet, ceremony, prayer, and ritual. I just love that.
Ceremony, prayer, and ritual, CPR. Yeah. Thank you, Lelania.
Oh, quick question. What do you
Sure.
think is the difference between intuition and telepathy, or do you think they are in the same?
Intuition.
sorry, what was the first word?
Intuition or telepathy, are they the same word or two different things?
I don't know. I would have to ponder that.
Yeah, that's a meditation unto itself.
Yeah, because intuition is sort of like, I mean, I think of it as intuition being our own communication with ourselves and what we perceive, and telepathy being interdependent, like being with another person.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lelania.
Also that we have a bandwidth open to the cosmic life, intelligence, being, consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Intuition comes through that wavelength. And then we're in the field and it happens between two people. But I think they're very related, right? Same capacity, different.
Yeah, it's an inner sense. I mean, it's an inner sense that we're, developing and
The gathering of information through.
Yeah. Well, Rex put in the chat room, intuition is spirit talking to you. Telepathy is a life form communicating with you, in my view. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah.
another take.
Wow. Thank you, Bianca. I caught you off guard, but was wonderful to have your insight.
Yeah,
Come back on if you got more.
Cosmos, I mean, that whole realm. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go to Dory next. Dory in Albuquerque-ish.
Yes, Rio Rancho / Santa Fe.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Depths of the indigenous culture here. Well, as you can see by the chat, I have a lot to say about this. And just relating to the conversation about plant communication, intuition, etc. There are people retraining us how to regain those methods of direct communication and connection with elements of the planet, which we have so lost through our culture, which has deliberately cut us off from nature. Is really an attempt to squash indigenousness, and I am doing my best to bring back my indigenous nature by and Cuyamungue's had a lot to do with that. I wanted to pick up on something Lee said about the indigenous peoples reinventing their cultures through their artwork, which, as you know, I'm deep in the middle of buying, collecting, selling what we have collected here. You know, the peoples of the Southwest and indigenous people everywhere are using earth elements to create beautiful objects, silverwork with gemstones, the pottery, the wool of the sheep for the rugs, and they are prayerfully working through, they are connecting with those elements as they are making the art object, which wasn't an art object when they started making them, they're utilitarian. But now the people are advancing their creativeness and making more and more beautiful, they're using their imagination in ways I can't even express how imaginative, but they're developing their leadership and their ability to support their communities by some people making a lot of money from these artworks. So that their people can stay on the land and continue their indigenous lives, their connection with the earth, their connection with their tribes, and their connection with the earth. So it's just a thought I had about and they are training us, they are teaching us through the artwork. Those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, to recognize the beauty of the indigenous lifestyles.
Yeah.
And we can recover. We can recover. So I put out a couple of references about how we go about doing that.
And could you tell
As
us?
I live in my
In the
wonderful
chat
apartment,
room.
all the accoutrements.
Yeah.
Just to the chat room, tell us, what are some of the ways that we can recover this? Because that's really the question here.
Yeah. And the book I recommended was this one.
We survived the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Even Charles.
the author is a Choctaw, but he's also an Episcopal bishop. I mean, he's a very erudite man, and he's on a campaign to teach the rest of us the ways that will take us back to survival on this planet. So take a look at that book. I put the reference in.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's basically community, earth-based community.
Absolutely.
Honoring.
Thank you, Dory. Yeah, that's beautiful.
One of the key lessons I learned is that our bodies are precious, our earth is precious, the physical is precious. And we're always taught, oh, you know, women, let's carry original sin here. Oh yeah, thanks a lot. And the earth, oh, let's get away from the earth and go down below and there's hell. I mean, come on, this is Mother Earth. And we are made of Mother Earth. And her molecules we borrow, she loans them out to us to have a physical body for these beautiful adventures. And then we turn them back in. And then we go on. So life, death, and rebirth is one of those beautiful principles that we see again and again and again in our visionary states, and that all of this is sacred, our physicalness, as well as the spirit, as well as everything around us and everyone around us. So what a revelation. That was huge for me. That allowed me to get back into my body and really appreciate it and live in it and not just in my head. That was a huge awakening for me since I met Felicitas and found an embodied spiritual practice and learned to enjoy this.
And Laura, the original discovery of Felicitas, which is your story to tell, but
Oh.
that's an important point, and that is that you asked the question,
Who are our Indigenous ancestors? Where do I find them? Where do I find their wisdom? Because we were interviewing people from many different Indigenous cultures and wisdom traditions and those long-lived cultures that actually arrived intact to the modern age with all of their heritage and their ways. And I'm like, ours got cut off at the knees so early on. We're broken. Where do I find my Indigenous ancestors? And a caller called up from Denver because we were nationally syndicated from KOB Denver. And she said, oh, you should check out Felicitas Goodman. She has a way to directly answer this question. That's all she said. And something struck me. And I've looked her up. I found her phone number. I don't even know how. Hadn't seen her book yet. And I had this wonderful conversation with her. She came on multiple interviews. And like after the first interview, I know I walked into the control room and I get, Paul, we're going to Santa Fe.
yeah,
Like, sign me up. Sign me up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
What she said was, well, my dear, you don't want to step on other cultures' toes. I understand that. But okay, your ancestors came from Europe. Go to those earliest cultures that left their mark in Europe. That would be Lascaux and those caves. They left a story. We have revived some of that story where you can directly experience that. You can look through their eyes. You can step into the eternal now, much as they did. You can draw from that same well of wisdom. I was hooked. And there we
yeah.
go.
That is the story.
One phone call. And I don't even know who that person was. I want to
Yeah.
thank them one of these days. I'm like, let me say thank you for making that call. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
And
only,
go ahead, Paul.
like I said, the only correction, I think KOB is Albuquerque. The KOB is not, but anyway, who cares about call letters? But I wanted to correct you so people don't email me telling me it's wrong.
Albuquerque. I think
Yeah.
it was. I know it was KOB. I just got the
Yeah.
cities. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. That makes perfect sense. She was in
Yeah.
Santa Fe. Albuquerque. Duh. Duh,
Yeah.
Laura. Okay.
Okay.
And
Beautiful.
then it's a matter of people that you've known for all these decades, such as Monica DeRas Bowles.
Right.
She's doing her work, we're doing our work, and then we discover there's a lot of interconnection right there.
Let's
Monica,
bring
let us congratulate you on the publishing of your new book, which I think the New Cosmic Story also is hearkening back to those true fundamental ways that the universe herself gives us. I think early people, that's all they had was the universe direct. We are going back to understand the universe and all our breath with science, with the new tools of science. And we're hearing the same story. But welcome, Monica.
Hi, you guys. And I'm really excited because I just yesterday got put my hands on our book, that was published by Orbis Books, and
Yeah.
you want to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Ah,
The
beautiful.
story of the noosphere, the
Yeah.
true collective intelligence. Yeah. So,
And
oh my gosh.
and and just listening, to all of you here now, where um rethinking with our or revisiting and in some sense in our short lives now, and the indigenous people have all along, although they've lost, you've mentioned some things that that have caused, like the agricultural diet and things like that. Well, there's nothing worse than, maybe our hotel chains that have those Fruit Loops dispensers.
Oh, yeah.
That, one time I was down, in New Mexico, I think, and I sat in a hotel. We're all familiar with that breakfast that's free, that you get,
Right.
those plastic dispensers. And there was some young shoeless children, a whole family of indigenous people, because we were like maybe on a reservation or closed our reservation, and the young ones were normal size for their age, and then as each got older, the oldest ones were obese. And it was like, this is so wrong. And I sat and watched while they ate cereal bowl after cereal bowl of this enriched food, like you take everything apart and then you add all these vitamins back in, like the industrial mind thinks it can do, and we separate and take everything apart and then we add and enrich and we give them all the nutrients they need. And this is killing us, to be separate in this way. I don't know. That came to mind when I was listening. This is the
whole knowledge base. We're breaking it down into little pieces and thinking they're all separate pieces. Now it's time to put it all together again and see the whole, see the holistic view, see its
yeah. And we
see how it supports each element.
This is what was that?
Oh, and see how each piece supports each other piece, every
Right.
piece.
Right. And this has been the modern industrial mind where we believe that there are bits of matter everywhere and they're disconnected and we have a conduit to some spiritual world with our soul because we've separated mind and soul. We've separated everything. And yet we can see today with our science and with our religions and the new ways in which they're trying to change and bring things together in a new way, we can see that we're connected in a much deeper way. And so we wrote this book because, the noosphere, it can be understood as a superorganism itself, where it's a living entity. It's just like the animal's mind is evoked by the synergy of all the cells in my body. So like my cells evoke my mind. The noosphere itself is evoked by individual humans. And we are evoking this thinking organism that is now self-reflective and turning back on ourselves and bringing it back together again. And it's called the new story. A lot of people are familiar with that. And it's got science, the classical religions, the woman relational reality, and it's got the indigenous wisdom. And so we're trying to do that. And I'm just so excited that I actually have this book in my hands now.
Good for you. Yeah.
Congratulations. Monica has and Brian Swim, her co-author and collaborator, many, many talks that are on YouTube. And also your Story of the Noosphere video series is just free for the viewing on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's called Story of the Noosphere. And yes, we can come on the 10th. And Brian Swim will come with me. And we'll come together and we'll tell you all about our book.
Oh, good. Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. And going back to my original introduction today, Monica, I was talking about how this concept of what we're referring to as indigenous worldview is not a belief system. It's not some kind of philosophy. It's not even a religion. It goes beyond all of that. It gets down to the core of science because that's the world that you are researching and looking at, bringing out those components of what science can tell us. And it's interesting that when you and Brian speak, and like that one presentation that I attended over on Whidbey Island, where we had the native voice and then we had the science voice back and forth, and it was the same story. It was the overlapping connection of that story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about beliefs. It's a different way of knowing. If you have beliefs, then you feel the need to defend them. We see so much of that today. Everywhere we engage with one another, we have these polarized views. And the one thing we can all agree on is that the other side has lost its mind. I mean, both sides believe the other has gone crazy. And, that's got to cause a pause.
Yeah.
That we have to go, okay, wow, at least we have this in common, But that's because we're defending beliefs. And we have to realize that there's a knowledge and knowing. It's always got a perspective and a time. And it can change. We're never a 99 and 1. We're always 50-50. At least that's everything we're paying attention to is 50-50. If it's 99 and 1, we're not paying attention.
It's just an assumed truth.
That's not, we don't think about those kinds of things, but everything we form opinions on strongly and engage with, we end up in a place like 50-50. it happens everywhere. And, and then when you're in that polarity, the challenge is to find the commonality beyond, because the universe is developing in time. It is converging. And we need new layers to hold steady between us as we move beyond our nationalities, our genders, our race, our politics, all these different things that we feel polarized about.
Right.
And
Let me
yeah.
bring up the concept of guardrails, because I hear that term a lot. Where are the guardrails so we just don't all fall off the cliff? Our society used to have guardrails, but I look at Indigenous guardrails as well. And Sam Leon Briggs talked about the food sovereignty, food heritage, food being such a key part of figure that one out for the health of a society, and the taboos that were in place. We've talked about this in the past about the taboo about let's not take everything. Let's only fish or hunt in a certain short season so that the animals can go and carry on. Let's harvest only so much. If we wipe out everything, it won't be there the next time. We need to cultivate. We need to protect those resources. I know a forester who says, the native peoples, they just didn't let everything just go to nature. They were cultivating nature, working with nature to help nature create the landscape that they needed for the animals that they wanted, for the trees that they wanted, for the berries that they wanted to make the whole. They tinkered enough, but they made it all work and sustainable. So where are the guardrails? When we were in Australia, we met with the folks of Tiwi Island, and they were talking about stricture societally that these men can't talk to these related women. And we thought, well, doesn't that make society rather awkward? But they defended it. They appreciated that. We have these moieties that we honor and all of the guardrails. And so I think in our freedom, sometimes I wonder, we just in a free for all, and there's no guardrails. The standards are gone about civility and politeness and honoring and all of that.
Ethics.
Are we going to tear everything down and then have a Mad Max world and then try to you try to rebuild from that? Or can we take what we have? Because, I want to honor my parents' generation and their parents and all the generations that came before and say, we have a society that works. It's not perfect. Maybe we need more guardrails so that the powers that be can't lead us astray. But can we build and tinker and tweak? My sister was saying, we were talking about how our dad accomplished so much. My sister was reminding me, his philosophy was you take a little tool and you tweak here and you tweak there, but you're not ripping everything apart to start over. Build on what you have. I wonder if we're willing to do that, or has it gotten so extreme that we feel like we have to, this is wrong, let's wipe it out. We had a very deep conversation with a 30-something who was all about, I'm an agent of chaos. I'm an agent of chaos, and we should just, really? Do you know what you're actually asking for? I wonder. Things need to change, and we need to tilt ourselves in a trajectory that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think we need both. We have these natural rhythms, predator prey, all these, the way our body stays at the same temperature, the number of stars that are formed in a galaxy. There are these rhythms, that have to do with density and gravity, all that. But there is also evolution, and it's ongoing. And even the structure of experience with which the human experiences the world, that's evolving. And there are so many aspects of, our structure of experience that and have led to incredible things. But you have to let, there's always going to be cataclysms too. I don't know. So you can tweak to a point, but sometimes there are great leaps that happen. And
but those leaps seem to be nature inspired, right? They seem to be, there's just something in the zeitgeist, in the atmosphere. Those have been phenomenal leaps.
Yeah.
And sometimes I also look at it like punctuated equilibrium. If you want to look at the evolutionary record, well, there's societal. equilibriums that now just leap as well because of you could call it cataclysmic changes.
The universe preserves what it values.
That's what I'm trying to say. That exactly the principle right there. The universe preserves what it values. I could call that an indigenous principle. The culture preserves what it values, and it puts some guardrails around it. For preservation. Art, we talked with Lee Brooks about the art. The art preserves so much of that. It's just written in there in a way to imbibe it without words, without language. It is the language, I feel. So it speaks to us. That's why we have the same symbols through all of our long history that show up over and over. So
Can you hear him purring?
no, I wish I could. I have met this. This is
Pigeon.
quite, Atticus. Yeah.
Atticus.
So
Wow.
what other principles do you see? I mean, I've long wanted to have a conversation in depth with you, Monica. What principles in the new cosmic story do you see that are really that were enlivened by the earliest cultures that we know?
Principles in the new story enlivened by the earliest cultures. I think that, okay, so, humans left Africa. Up until that point, all the diversity of animals that we see, of life, it diversified and it spread out. But humans became self-reflective, developed symbols and self-reflective consciousness, thinking about thinking, and they left Africa. They had this restlessness this seeking, they, in some sense, feeling like nothing was ever enough. They had to keep going. I mean, the chimpanzees and apes, they stayed in Africa. They never left, and they're there today. But we encircle the entire earth, and we go through these different stages of development. As we go, we settle into our biomes, and we become like the land where we are. And we're evolving, but we're evolving in new ways, so that when humans, after circling the earth, they meet up in Hawaii, and they can still breed. They are the same biological organism after hundreds of thousands of years. They had no longer diversified in terms of their genetic structure, but they had become completely different in regards to cultural evolution. And the great diversification was
that environment. Go ahead.
In our thoughts, and yet there seemed to be a path. I mean, everybody all over the surface of the earth developed a written language. Why would, wherever they went, why wouldn't they become, why a written language? Why would that happen in every major civilization? So it's strange. Wherever they went, they developed in the same way at a different time, over a different rate. And now that's continued, and we've created, through communication, we've created this giant network above us. We're calling it, somebody called it, or Rex called it, collective intelligence. But it's like we are the red blood cells of this organism, as it is to the body. We are self-reflective minds that are all part of this. And if you're born into anything else today, you're not a human. If you weren't born into this structure, you couldn't be human. You need it. It's our libraries. It's our physical structures that we built. We've created this noosphere, this whole structure of human existence, and we encircle the earth.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know,
One thing about the story we tell ourselves that I have a question on. When we were talking with, and anybody else who wants to chime in here, raise your hand so we know you're ready to share. So when we were talking with Thomas Riccio about, you mentioned the collective intelligence, Rex mentioned AI. That's another term for it. Collective intelligence is a form of artificial intelligence, that term. And we were talking with Thomas. He was saying that People are now looking to robots to dispense wisdom because now they can collect all of the known written science, the collective human output, and then crunch it down. And I'm thinking, what to have what value? I said, Thomas, what could a robot possibly say to us if they're just regurgitating all of human wisdom, like the whole mess of it? And what about the eternal wisdom traditions? And he didn't have a good answer for that.
Well, it's a tough
Why
one.
aren't our eternal wisdom traditions that were often downloaded from trance states, from altered states, the shamans of old, the rishis of the Vedic traditions? We have to go to another realm to pull down wisdom. That has been a long, 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 long tradition, and certainly with indigenous wisdom, right? You were engaged with the universe, you were talking with the universe, you could say. And, I'm thinking that is where wisdom for me comes, right? Human wisdom and the intellect is such a key piece of it, but it's not the whole piece. We need all of it. I appreciate the New Cosmic Story for saying, hey, look what the cosmos is telling us. Read her, read that body, read the cosmos. Look what the instruments that we're sending out into space. And Tony, you'll have something to say on this. Tony Hull, scientist mystic. But yes, we can read it all. But I think what I'm trying to say is, what do you think is coming down if we're really listening to the universe? If you're listening to the noosphere, if you're saying we're evolving, what is the next body of wisdom that wants to emerge? I guess that was a roundabout way of me asking that question.
Okay, I think that what AI is doing really
And will it come through us?
is correlating. It's doing massive correlations of facts. The only kind of knowledge that it can give us is a reiteration of facts, and it's doing it brilliantly. It's doing it in ways that will so far outpace us that it becomes dangerous. Now, it's not that AI is going to take over and subject us. I don't feel like that's the danger. It's just when we rely on that, it's runaway. Because all it's doing is correlating. And, forgive me here.
Inner knowledge as well. If we're seeking it always outwardly, where does the inner knowledge? We don't want to atrophy that bandwidth either.
Right.
Right.
And that was one of the warnings that Thomas Riccio was saying, is that instead of kneeling before a statue of Mother Mary, we're going to be kneeling in front of in some kind of a robot, because we're looking to the robot to be a wisdom keeper, someone that can have the knowledge available to us. And we always are looking. There's such a movement of looking outside of oneself for direction rather than looking within. And so the robot.
Sorry, that's such an important point. Looking outside of ourselves. And I was just going to go there. I want to make a connection between what we're doing right now with AI and what we've done for so long with some of our religions. And like in particular, I don't want to offend anyone, but let's think about astrology for a second. What are we noticing? Even though it places us deeply embedded into our lives and looking for some meaning, we're actually going back to our birthplace and finding a fact, that where all the planets were aligned on the day that we were born, and somehow correlating that with the events of our lives. So, AI is just like a master astrologer in some sense, and they're giving us so much information. Or kneeling in front of a transcendent Virgin Mary. It's all transcendent. It's out there. And we have this conduit to it. But when we begin to recognize, as is now possible for the first time in the history of human experience, well, apart from certain indigenous wisdoms, but even they did not recognize what I'm about to say, that the universe is expanding. And if you go back in time, and it doesn't matter if it's 13 million years or 14 million years or 15, or if there's a period of inflation, but if you go back in time, it's a single point. So tiny. And that became me and you in the music of Mozart, as Brian would say. It became everything that it is. in this relational correlated development, so that in a deep sense, I am the universe universing. That's how I know it, because it's deep in my bones.
Yeah.
Because the whole history of the universe, it's holding steady in me. It moves so slow that we actually think that there are laws of physics that govern its motion. Matter, someone mentioned the rock being part of this. We actually think that we could turn that rock into a and predict it with, its future motion, everything about it, with the laws of the universe governing inert dead matter. But no matter is dead, because everything is developing in time. Motion is relationship. Motion creates time. Yeah, sorry.
That's good. Crosstalk. Yeah.
So when we know this one thing, it really does change everything. And it opens the place for the indigenous wisdom, which now deepens into this long, long history. They're no longer thinking in terms of a few hundred years and a few generations.
Yeah.
But to the depth of time, and realizing that there does also appear to be a task. Something is pressing into us. Otherwise, what's holding it together?
It's not just gravity. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe it's just gravity, but gravity in the form of in a human mode. Gravity between
the allurement principle, it just wants to pull everything in because it loves it. Yeah.
Well, gravity is love.
Yeah.
Gravity among celestial bodies is just measured by, we think, just by gravity. But between humans, it's the love and allurement that draws us together. So love is the human mode of gravity.
I think
love is the human mode of gravity. That attractive forces, that come together.
Well,
Wow.
and there's coming back to the original core principle of our conversation, talking about the timelessness of indigenous wisdom, and that there's an element and a respect for time in a different way than we as European thinkers approach time. A lot of times it's the indigenous mindset that understands generationally what happens if you don't maintain systems, and that you don't have the same level of connectedness to the past. And so while we have a hard time remembering, the Vietnam War or something that happened in our lifetime, they're talking about things that happened hundreds, thousands of years within their history. And I think that
they remember. They remember.
Yeah, there's a memory built in, a respect to that. And I think that as we rewrite our path as part of the humanity, that becomes important for us to understand the full history and story of humanity, and that story helps direct us to the future. It's the gauges that we have to understand so we don't keep repeating the same silliness over and over and over again.
I also think that one of the ways that we are needing to understand that we're all connected is to know that there has been migration after waves of migration. It's just so many layers of migrations that are happening.
Right.
And you mentioned leaving Africa. Well, look at the Ice Age and the Gravettian culture, one of the last cultures of the Ice Age. I was surprised that James Harrod, another guest of ours, and a Cuyamungue Institute member, he was saying, the Gravettian globalization, they spanned all of Europe up into Siberia. And this was they traded ideas and artifacts and building methods and who knows what. I mean, there's so few artifacts left to read, but we can see the same tools, the same Venuses, the same, all of this. This was one culture. And then we're looking at the migrations into the Americas. Well, from the Ice Age, we have talked with many scholars who are saying, hey, that land bridge was open even during the Ice Age. Mammoths were there, and people followed the mammoths, and they came down into the Americas. So our indigenous cultures have that long, 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 deep histories. What they're saying was true. We've always been here. We were the first peoples here. So we can see how sophisticated they were, clever, resilient, travelers, curious, bold, daring. Yeah, movers and shakers. I mean, literally. So, I mean, we have such a deep history. So I guess I just want to respect those cultures that came before and all that they gave us. And
The hero's journey, the Odysseus, pales in comparison to what was achieved
thank
by
you.
these great migrations.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
had ships, come on. You guys did it on foot.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, thank you, Monica. Yeah, it's
But I think
always.
one of the keys
I'm
though,
ready to come and bring Brian and share this.
on
Yeah,
November
yeah.
10th, I am so pleased. Yeah, tell Brian thank you. I want to just say though that one of the key lessons when we say, everything is sacred, all the world is sacred, the cosmos is our backyard. That's what we get over and over and over again in our embodied spiritual practice, literally, and told in so many different ways. The new cosmic story is saying the same thing. You're saying we are the cosmos. The cosmos is our backyard. We are the cosmos. It is us. We're saying life is sacred. Everything is sacred. Everything is sacred. You're saying it's a miracle that it even exists at all, that everything came together to create a universe that supports life, that life can grow up to say, oh, look around. Wow. So I see that as also a shared truth here between the cutting edge. And your story is the cutting edge. Everything's leading to that, I think. Take a look around the neighborhood, the cosmos. It's saying that. And so,
one last thing here is that this idea that it is about something because it really is miraculous. It's not that I'm saying that there is an intelligent designer out there who made it just so, but I'm saying this is so strange that all these ratios are exactly what they are that could lead to this, and it's called the anthropic principle. But some of the greatest one of the greatest thinkers of all, Stephen Hawkins, you've all heard about, multi-worlds, that there is an infinite number of worlds, so
big
that,
bang, 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 bang. Yeah.
one of them would end up being like ours.
Yeah.
So it's not so unusual. But in order to say it's not so unusual, it's just random. The universe ended up like this randomly, where everything, is really quite beautiful. But it ended up this randomly.
Yeah.
In order to hold that idea, they come up with a notion that is completely unverifiable and therefore not very scientific, that there's an infinite number of worlds. And so therefore, this one is not so unusual. Our minds are so bent on trying to, downgrade everything and make it industrial and matter and inert and dead, instead of saying, my God, it's alive. But not alive, but it's moving. It's developing.
Well, if it's evolving,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, we're moving. We're going somewhere. I mean, what could be more important to know?
Right.
That we're about something.
what could be more important to know? Life is meaningful.
That it's meaningful. Because, all the young people who don't know that it's meaningful, or who feel like, I'll just do drugs and I'll just, drink and, it's all going to be gone. It's not, I don't think it's all going to be gone. I think there's reason to believe that it will hold together. I mean, I don't know what it'll be like, but it'll hold together. It's come this far.
Right. I mean, it kind of brings us back to a central theme of what we feel that Goodman brings to the table, and all of just one drop in the ocean. But all of the scholars that are talking about the fact that we need to have an engaged, embodied spiritual somethings, that we have an experiential thing that expands our connectedness to all of life around us. We're not going to butcher a planet that we see as an extension of ourselves. It's that disconnect that creates the destruction that we see around us. And so if we can break down the disconnect and reconnect, it's the greatest hope we have for the future, that we have an opportunity for humanity to direct itself, but we have to get past this disconnect. And the disconnect is so severe right now that I know it's challenging to even imagine a world without it. But I think that that has to be our goal, that we have to reclaim what we're calling indigenous wisdom, which is human wisdom. It's the first origins of ourselves that we brought to the table. We all knew this, every culture, every color, we all knew this at one time in history. It's just that, like we talked, like you just mentioned, the younger generation today has lost some of that, the willingness to understand their connectedness to the world around them. We did it as humanity, this disconnect. Everything is an example and a reflection of that
Where do we
disconnect.
find hope?
So to
I
find
wanna go
hope,
to the gallery.
we come back to find hope. We come back to that original concept that we have to find ways for reconnecting. Reconnecting doesn't happen just on an intellectual level. Intellectual levels spur us to look for a next step of wisdom so that internally we can make that change, that shift. So that's where I feel that we can play it.
Do me a favor. Go to gallery view and let's just open up the mic. And I want to know, one, where do we find hope? Monica, I see where you find hope.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
examined it. And, I find meaningful work, community, nourishing the body, and an examined life, principles that we're all living here in this community, and that our ancestors, even the Greeks, were saying that's a recipe for contentment. So, but I want to know, where do we find hope?
Lee, your mic is turned on. Do you want to just say where you find hope?
Oh boy, I don't think anybody's got a clear that one. I think we have to create it, and I have this notion about transcending into the future, and how we do it. It's the same question you have, and where we draw the strength, the information, the guidance to do that. Is it from the past? Is it from experiences, or do we need to create something new?
Yeah.
And can we do it given the confusion and misunderstanding today, and nobody's on the same page? It's hard to have that unless we're all together in something, in some way. And
Right.
maybe it's our history that we have to revisit and realize where we came from.
Thank you. Thank you. I see hope in that we have the inner capacity to grow. We're blessed with that equipment, and that we have an inner GPS, right? If we tune in to this evolutionary state that's driving us. And so we're all equipped. We're fully equipped to write our path and come together again. We have everything we need. Are we going to do it? Are enough of us going to do it? But who else wants to weigh in on this?
If somebody
I want to weigh
Melania,
in.
go ahead.
What Rex said earlier is get out of here and get in here.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that we can relate with through the heart, we'll build on that through direct experience.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
For me, what gives me hope is when I can stay present and really connect with the people around me, the animals around me, the world around me, when I can just stay present and not go off into some little story and just feel that connection and interact from that place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie.
Love that.
Yeah. Peggy?
That's a tough question, Laura Lee, and I love thinking about that. And I think my immediate answer is that it's a choice and an attitude. And I think that I find hope because I see potential everywhere. And so that's what gives me hope.
Beautiful. Thank you, Peggy.
Going from me to we. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I really feel like it's a part of the mission of this institute as we explore and understand. Laura and I are on a mission ourselves, just simply wanting to look for the meaning like everybody else. And so we're using the platform of this institute and taking advantage of our previous career and experience in the world of media to combine those worlds to help understand the human story from a new perspective. And so we want to do the experiential aspect, which we talk about a lot, the ritual posture part of it, but we also are on this journey of community. The power of having people like yourselves gathering together and taking the time to embrace these kinds of concepts and these kinds of discussions, that gives me hope, right? That is so rewarding that people want to spend their Sunday where they could be doing something else. But they've been here for 2 hours having these kinds of discussions and listening to this kind of a discussion. So that for me is what is so gratifying, and that does definitely give me hope. And I think that with our work, we're finding more and more and more reasons to research the power of community, the power of people coming together of like minds. I think that is such a powerful theme. Laura, what was the guy's name? Paul Ray, who did the research back in the 1990s, the cultural creatives. And he said the greatest percentage of the population fall under this category of cultural creatives. It's just that we don't work together. We all have independent thinking. We're independent people. We don't realize the power that we hold because we don't come together as a unit to direct what's going to happen into the future. And he was saying that, like I just mentioned, 25 years ago, and wrote his book about that. And he did a bunch of research looking at the amount of people that fall into that category of people who see themselves as uniquely progressive and open to this world of whatever you want to refer to it as. That anyway, all of this is there, and that there's a power to that. So I think that with the work that we're doing and how we're going with this institute is are rewarding us from that perspective, that the experience of trance states is one thing. The experience of community is the next, and the spirit of communication, like we're doing today, is another piece of that puzzle as we continue down the path.
Well, one thing, Monica, that you helped me solidify that I've long felt is that I trust the universe. I trust whatever's happening is supposed to be happening. And it's not like we always have an easy road. We know in the hero journey, the road will go rocky. There will be obstacles. There will be threshold guardians. There will be a dark night of the soul. That is the path that we're walking. It strengthens us. It causes us to evolve. It asks us to get stronger, to leap over those hurdles, to find a way through and around. And we always have this GPS, though. We're always going to find, when we go through all that, we're going to find the gift, whatever that gift is. And we're going to bring it home, and we're going to share it with our community. And we're each on this journey, I believe, collectively and individually. And so I trust that the journey is set to bring me to my fullest potential, to bring me to my fullest strength, to bring me to my fullest wisdom. And so I'm willing to just meet it and just go, okay, I've got to dive in. It's going to be uncomfortable at times. It's going to be rewarding. It's going to be joyful. It's going to be sad. There's going to be moments of it all. But through it, I take hope in that, hey, this is a well-worn path. There have been generations upon generations of heroes who've walked this way. This is the human story. This is the human story within the cosmic story. And the universe in her wisdom has given us this path to help us evolve, to help us grow. And it isn't just delivered. We have to put in some effort here, right? We have to be called forth. It's going to allure us down the path and reward us, right? As well as challenge us. And so I just feel like, okay, universe, I trust you. It's going to be quite the ride, but I'm going to try to surf, keep on top of the crest of the wave and not get pummeled by it. That's the most I can do here. While I try to just learn and absorb and hold hands with one another and just make it as fun as I can make it, as joyful, and the best community ever are those who are equally going for it.
Beautiful.
So here it is, universe. We're all here. You're willing students.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Monica.
And I just want to say that your new cosmic story that you're working on, I find hope every time I talk with you, Monica. I find hope that this universe has a sense about her, that she is, she's the womb of creation. Let me call her a she. And that she has our best interests at heart, which is that she's helping us evolve. and that whatever it's going to be even more glorious. And I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this stage. I'm thankful for it all. And if we can open our hearts in gratitude to one another and to this all, yeah, that's where I find hope. So
Thank you, Monica. I want to
congratulations
thank
on your book.
Yeah.
Tell people how to get it. Where do we get this?
the book. Is it on
Story-
Amazon?
It's called Story of the Noosphere. I can't, it's out there already.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful book. I can't even believe how beautiful it is. And this is the artwork of Sebastian Swim, who is Brian's son. And it's got 50 pages of endnotes. But the scientific support.
Well, we're
Anyways.
going to hear the whole story coming up in November when you both come back on, and then we can make sure everybody is aware of it. In the meantime, you can get your copies. You can be prepared for that discussion and know exactly what questions you're going to want to ask. So, thank you, Monica.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you all for being here today and spending your Sunday with us. And we'll continue the conversation next week. We're going to be talking about mystery schools of old and followed.
Janet Rudolph and David Elkington, really not to be missed. They're both really fascinating.
It's going to be fun. That's next week. That's a teaser. All right, everybody, turn on your mics and say goodbye to one another. And we thank you so much for being here today.
For all your
Thank you for doing this, Paul and Laura. I mean, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Every Sunday is so fun.
Thank you all.